Hello everyone, welcome to MeghaDiscourse where literature meets excellence. In today's lecture, we are going to cover the age of Elizabethan, known as the golden age of English literature. And have you ever wondered that why this is known as the golden age of English literature? And why did a small island suddenly give birth to the immortal poets, dramatists, and explorers and thinkers who changed the destiny of English language itself? So this is the story of an age of power, poetry and passion, the age of Elizabeth, roughly spanning 1558 to 1603. It is an era when England found not only its queen but also its voice. So when Queen Elizabeth I ascended the throne, England was trembling with uncertainties. In our previous ages, we learned that that was the age, that was the time of uncertainty, which is social, political and historical. But now the scenario changed completely. So let's move to the first part, the historical and political background of the age. Queen Elizabeth I began her reign in 1558, following a time of deep unrest. Her predecessors, Edward VI, Mary I, they have divided the nation through religious conflict between Catholics and Protestant. So Elizabeth brought a sense of balance and moderation and creating what we call the Elizabethan religious settlement, a middle path that restored stability. This is the first major point that it is known as the golden period. Her 45-year rule witnessed peace after turmoil, strong governance and national pride. In 1588, England achieved one of its greatest victories, the defeat of Spanish Armada. It is important one that when it happened and why so. So it is a triumph actually which gave English people a new sense of destiny and confidence. Under her rule, England became a world power. This political peace allowed arts and learning to flourish like never before. So this is what the historical background of the age. There was peace, there was pride, there was national integration. Now the second part, what is the social and economic background of the age? The Elizabethan society was full of energy, was full of creativity, ambition, and the Renaissance, which began in Italy, has now fully reached England, bringing new ideas of humanism, beauty and exploration. Education expanded through grammar schools, universities like Oxford, Cambridge. People were reading classical literature, classical authors like Plato, Aristotle, Virgil, Ovid, and finding inspiration in them. Economically, the age was very prosperous. Trade and commerce grew rapidly. This prosperity gave writers the freedom of experiment, publish and perform. The printing press, established by William Caxton in 1476, it gave a wide knowledge to the readers and common man. So for the first time, books were within reach of educational middle class. That is the second greatest point. Now why the age flourished? Actually, so there were several reasons. First one is the political stability, religious stability and religious tolerance, economic prosperity, Renaissance humanism, and the spirit of adventure, navigation, geographical discoveries. Royal patronage was also there. The queen herself was a lover of music, poetry and drama, and thus the nature became the mirror of nation's soul, which is filled with joy, intellectuality, imagination, creativity, passion. What are the literary features of the age? What is the spirit of the age? So let us explore what made Elizabethan literature so special. Number one, imagination and romanticism. Writers dreamed boldly and mixing reality with idealism. Number two, humanism. man became the center of art and thought, not merely religion. Number 3, national pride. Now, writers celebrated England's glory. The next one is experimentation. So, in poetry, prose, and drama, new forms were born, which we are going to cover soon. Next is harmony of intellect and emotion. So, bit of language balanced with depth of thought, with passion, words, the language. And the next is use of rich and musical English. They use blank words. They were Spenser in stanza. This is full of metaphor, imagery, and eloquences. So in short, Elizabethan literature is both intellectual and passionate, moral and artistic. There are many writers of the age, some major important one like Edmund Spenser, known as the poet's poet, masterpiece, the fairy queen, the shepherd's calendar, and he introduced Spenserian stanza. The next one is Sir Philip Sidney, the Renaissance man. He was soldier, scholar, poet. Astrophel and Stella is his masterpiece. It is the first great English sonnet sequence, Astrophel and Stella, expressing the conflict of love and reason, longing. He has also written Defense of Poetry. The next one is William Shakespeare, the marvelous one, the marvelous man. And he was remembered as a dramatist. He has written 154 sonnets as well, and which is reflect his deep emotions and philosophical insight. So his poetry defines the Elizabeth ideal of beauty, love, time, mortality. There are other poets like Michael Drayton, George Chapman, Samuel Daniel. They also enrich the age with their lyrics, with their sonnets and songs. The age of dramatists. So drama was heart of Elizabethan age, the true national art form. So in earlier year, there was interludes, morality play, miracle play, which were very popular. But soon drama matured under the great geniuses. And they were Christopher Marlowe, Robert Greene, Thomas Kidd, known as University Wits. So before Shakespeare, there came a group which is known as University Wits, including Christopher Marlowe, Robert Greene, Thomas Kidd, Thomas Nash, George Peele, John Lilly. They were from Oxford or Cambridge University. So they developed blank verse and created tragic heroes and filled the stage with the passion. And I think you have read about Dr. Faustus and his tragic death. It is a masterpiece written by Christopher Marlowe. So Christopher Marlowe was the greatest among them. His plays like Dr. Faustus, Tamburlaine, the Great, and the Edward, the Jew of Malta, they were the soul of ambition and the power. He created Marlowean hero. It is a man who aspires beyond limits, like Faustus, who sold his soul for the sake of knowledge. Then came the towering figure, William Shakespeare, the ultimate dramatist. He was the perfect all forms, tragedy like Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello. He has comedy like As You Like It, Twelfth Night, historical plays like Richard, Henry. And his language is very universal and very human, exploring love, ambition, and jealousy. The next one is Ben Jonson, the contemporary, and he added intellectual discipline and classical form to comedy like Volpone and The Alchemist. There were also other dramatists like Thomas Dekker, John Martin, Thomas Heywood filled the stage with variety. So Elizabethan drama thus became the living theatre of English soul. There was prose writers and thinkers as well. Prose achieved elegance and purpose in this age, like Francis Bacon, father of English prose and modern scientific thinking. Essays teach moral wisdom in short, polished sentences, studies serve for delight, for ornament and for ability. It is a line written by Francis Bacon. The another one is John Lilly. His work, The Anatomy of Wit, introduced a decorative rhythmic prose style called euphemism, full of balance and contrast. The next one is Richard Hakluyt. He collected voyages and travel accounts that celebrated exploration and adventure, navigation. The next one is Sir Walter Raleigh. He was poet, explorer, and the prose writer. He has written the history of world, and there are so many fine lyrics written by him. So through prose, the Elizabeth expresses the new spirit of inquiry, observation, and the worldly wisdom. So what was new in this age so far as literature is concerned? We have blank verse, which became the main vehicle of the drama. And Spenserian stanza gave English poetry a new rhythm. Third one is sonnet sequence became fashionable, and prose become flexible and intellectual. Public theatre were also there, like the Globe, the Curtain, the Rose, became center of creativity. And last one is the human experience, that is not religion alone, become the central theme of art. So the speciality and essence of literature is in combination of beauty and wisdom, unity of thought and emotions, nationalism and patriotism, diversity of themes like love, power, faith, virtue. There was musical and rich language, poetic, even in prose. And indeed, the Elizabethan writers gave English its golden crown. Furthermore, there are many literary movements. The first one is Renaissance humanism, which was originating in Italy. So humanism reached England through scholars like Erasmus and Thomas More. It emphasized reason, beauty, human dignity instead of dogmatic figure. Literature began to focus on human experience, love, ambition, and knowledge. So writers looked back to the classical work of Plato, Cicero, for example, Sidney's Defense of Poetry, which justifies poetry as a moral teacher. There is another writer, Samuel Purchas, who has written Purchas, his pilgrimage, which is actually become the source of Kubla Khan, written by S.T. Coleridge. The second movement is the sonneteer movement, which is inspired by Petrarch, the Italian poet. English writers like Sir Thomas Wyatt, Henry Howard, that is Alf Surrey, and later Sidney, Shakespeare, and Spenser. They popularized the sonnet sequence. So these sonnets explored love, time, beauty, immortality through their poetic draft. It introduced new rhyme schemes and psychological introspection into verse. Next one is euphemism and the prose movement, started by John Lilly, and is with his work Euphues, the Anatomy of Wit, in 1578. So it actually characterized by balanced sentences, alliteration, and ornated style. It is a sign of linguistic experimentation. Through artificial, it made English prose elegant, rhythmic, and expressive, preparing the way for Bacon concise essays. The next one is the dramatic movement, that rise of English drama from the miracle morality plays to the Renaissance theatre. We have university wits, we have blank verse, tragic hero, romantic imagination, then it is Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and so. Neoclassicism. Some writers like Ben Jonson looked back to the classical rules of art, balance, and decorum. So his comedies reflect an early form of classical restraint that would later dominate in the Augustan age. In a nutshell, the age of Elizabethan was more than a period. It was a rebirth of English spirit. It united power with poetry, and faith with imagination, and intellect with emotions. So it gave us a language which is so rich that even today we quote it without knowing. This age shows that when freedom meets creativity, literature becomes eternal. So whenever you open the Faeriequeen or watch Hamlet or King Lear and read Bacon essay, so remember you are touching the heartbeat of England's golden age, the immortal age of Elizabethan. If you find this lecture insightful, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel.